Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, love. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, JamesBFauntleroy. So good to see wait a minute. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. So you can find me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show and Sundays for the JB show. And typically here on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Well, you guys get to see me a second day in a row. 2 JBs at the same time. What are the odds of that? Good to see all of you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you guys have not already, go ahead and give a like. This also helps me out. To the people who are watching, that shows that you actually like what you are watching. Also, if you have not already, go ahead and subscribe to my Substack at Jaybefaunt.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles, so you have that there. Also, for anybody who wants to send me any questions that they want me to video respond to, you guys can actually send me through QBounty. You guys can go to qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. And it's basically like giving super chats, but it's more personalized and it's on video directly to you. So I can answer those questions for you. So thank you very much. It is also the holidays. So Santa has come early with the gifts in his sleigh. He's got a big sack ready to. Anyway, go ahead. If you guys want to give gifts to your loved ones, you guys can go to patreon.com/Jaybefaunt/gifts. So give them the gift that keeps on giving, my face. No, not really. But anyways, why are we here? We're going to be having a conversation. Hello to everybody that's watching right now. But of course, as when I always have a guest, I want to be very respectful of their time. Make sure that we get to what we need to talk about immediately. But I will be saying hello to all of you really soon. But what are we talking about today? We will be talking about the puppet show that is Western hegemony. We'll be talking about a unipolar puppet show that we have going on right now. And I would like to introduce my guest. We have a journalist, activist, and my anger translator extraordinaire. We have Mr. Richard Medhurst joining me. So good to have you back on.
It's good to be back on, brother. How are you?
I'm happy to see you because I feel like, especially now, we need an adult in the room. Between people like you, Michael Hudson, Jeffrey Sachs, I'm blanking on his name, and he's doing an event today. Oh my gosh. Scott Ritter, Danny Haifong, Margaret Kimberly, yourself. It's like we need the real adults in the room in order to explain what's going on. Because a lot of what's going on right now, we're seeing the puppetry as, it's going on in the world. Right now, there's things that are going on, for instance, in Syria, especially in regards to the rebels that are basically cornering Assad. And so I would like to start to get into some of this. But one of the first things I actually want to get into, I know it's been a few weeks, about 4 weeks or so, since the U.S. elections that have just taken place. What is your reactions to the United States elections, and was it what you expected?
I mean, it's, we're talking about puppet shows. I guess the term I usually use is a clown show. Not too far off. It's not too far off, right? That's how I would describe it. I mean, the last election in 2020, I covered that one a bit more in detail with the primary, and Jesus, like that was horrendous. It was. I knew what it's like. I've been watching presidential debates since I was. I remember the first one I watched was Kerry versus Bush in 2004. Like I would watch all of it, and that was for me that was like watching Americans vote for George Bush again after put all the shady stuff in Florida aside for a second. Like the wars, just invading Afghanistan, Iraq, the WMD lies, like all of that had already happened, right? By the time he was reelected, and he was still reelected. So, that was very sobering. And you understand then also when those two Bush and Kerry, they went to the same university, right? I believe they're both in Yale. You know, they're class buddies. So when you watch Kamala and Donald Trump, like the only difference Donald Trump and the usual clown show is that he's from New York. He's from that circle over there, and you know he's still a billionaire. He's still and ironically he cuts more directly to the interests that really do run Washington, because it is being run from New York anyway. So you know, seeing Trump being reelected is just unbelievable. The cabinet that he put in place afterwards, like everyone that I expected, he put in place. All these Zionist, raging Zionists back in place, and it doesn't matter if he doesn't put neocons, like I mean, in the John Bolton 1980s sense, back in power, because you know most of these Zionists are neocons anyway. So we already know the kind of worldview that they have and the kind of politics that they're going to be pushing. So I don't expect anything different from the last time around with Donald Trump. And you mentioned Syria, and we'll talk about his statement in a bit. But you know, Donald Trump. I made a video a few years ago. I think it was titled "Donald Trump was a gift to Israel," and I just kind of listed all the things that he had done in his time in office. So yeah, it was my reaction to the election is just that it's a victory for Israel again.
Yeah, especially what's going on. You know, I feel that it's definitely the victory that it's the victory that Israel's okay with. Because I remember, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name, but he did the Thinking Muslim podcast, and he was basically saying if there's a rejection of Kamala Harris, that's a rejection of Zionism. And even though Trump wins, it puts Israel on notice that the United States in its totality really is still wholesale rejecting Zionism because of the genocide in Gaza. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't agree with that whatsoever. Look, again, just because you have more people, more students coming out and protesting, and it's true, you have more open anti-Zionism in the U.S. now than ever before. That's true, but in the ruling class, they're just as Zionists. Once again, if you look at Donald Trump, what he did with the moving the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, saying that you know, Israel's illegal annexation of Jerusalem in the 1980s is illegal, and that's the capital. And then he did the same thing with the Golan Heights in Syria, and they built some cheap settlement they named it Trump Heights. It's still there, you know. It's like an illegal Israeli settlement in Syria, and it's called Trump Heights. So you know, he did all of those things for Israel, and then in addition to killing Soleimani, he pulled out of the nuclear deal as well. He put sanctions on Syria, sanctions on Iran. What did he not do for Israel? Like you know, the genocide in Gaza does not you know tip the balance to say that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are more Zionist than Donald Trump. It just doesn't. You know, like butchering Palestinians. They're always butchering Palestinians. Look how many operations they've done in Gaza. Those moves by Trump were very big political moves and breaks with previous U.S. administrations. No U.S. president before that was willing to take those gambles and say that this part of Syria is now Israel, and validate an illegal annexation, and do the same thing with Jerusalem. So you know, it was very easy afterwards for Biden and Kamala to say nothing at all and not change that policy. But Trump is the one who went ahead and did that. So I still make the case that he is more Zionist than Biden and Kamala.
Okay, that's a good analysis, and I appreciate that. You know, as far as you know the election goes, I say that the corporate dictator still won.
Yeah.
And of course, I went third party. I said absolutely not to either one of them.
That's the only sane option.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's the only sane option, is to go third party. It's the only sane option.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, what is your thoughts to some of the Arab and Muslim people who they figured that because of what's going on in Gaza, they just wanted to stick it to Kamala Harris because of the administration's role in in Gaza. Because a lot of them were saying, well, we just wanted to stick it to Harris. And my thought is, if you really want to stick it to Harris, you just go third party. Why are you going with Trump?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it makes no sense to go with Trump. You're still buying into the whole pro-Zionist candidate framework. It doesn't make any sense at all. You have to go third party. Not to mention the fact that ironically, Jill Stein was the only Jewish candidate on the ballot, right? And on top of that, she was the only anti-Zionist candidate. So, like, and pro-Palestine. I mean, her policies are very clear. So, I don't even understand what the appeal is of Donald Trump. If you really your policy is to vote for someone who's pro-Palestinian and stick it to the administration, you tick both those boxes by going with Jill Stein.
Yeah, there's a question I had, and a comrade of mine who is part of the RBN Orlando chapter, she's also Muslim. She had this question, and I thought, man, that's a really great question to ask. So I had it written down, and I want to make sure. Shout out to you, Sabiha. I want to make sure I ask this question because this one is really interesting. What are the realms of possibility do you think about Israel? Because I know they bombed mosques and they destroyed temples and they destroyed schools and hospitals. What is the possibility of them destroying Al-Aqsa Mosque, and how possible is the reaction from the Muslim majority countries? How do you think that would turn out? Because she told me a variable what she thinks will happen, and I'm trying to juxtapose because I don't see that out of the realm of possibility of Israel actually doing.
Yeah, it's not, and they, if you look at Netanyahu's government coalition, he's had to in recent years side with more. Again, I hesitate to say this, like more right wing, because who is really more right wing than Netanyahu, right? But I'm talking about these people that were, even by Israeli standards, convicted of terrorism, Jewish terrorism, like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, and barred from military service and so on, right? So even by Israeli standards, they were embarrassed of these people, and Netanyahu's gone and had to incorporate them in his government coalition. And these people, they are. Smotrich, speaking of which, is openly saying about 2-3 weeks ago that they want to extend, their plan for Greater Israel all the way to Damascus in Syria. So destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque is on their list of goals for these people. They are that crazy. And again, that doesn't mean Netanyahu is any better. He's literally in bed with them. That's my point. But it is within the realm of possibility. And the problem is that the West have been allowing Israel to get away with more of these things. I mean, Donald Trump saying that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and saying that their illegal annexation of Jerusalem was legal in 1980 and 1981. That paves the way for this. It absolutely paves the way for something, God forbid, like the Al-Aqsa Mosque being destroyed. And we've seen Israelis go in a million times with tear gas and batons, and they just beat people while they're praying during Ramadan. Like, they have no shame whatsoever about what they're doing. So I unfortunately, I do see it within the realm of possibility. And the problem is that the countries that are supposed to have a strong Muslim stance, like Saudi Arabia, like Turkey, like Egypt, they've been, bought and paid for and brought into the Zionist fold. They're not going to do anything really. Like, I mean, we saw a Holocaust unfolding in Gaza. It's still unfolding, and they're not doing anything. As a matter of fact, they're helping Israel. So what makes you think that they're going to do anything if the Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed? I really don't see them doing anything at all. So Israel, from their point of view, in this Israeli society, they've got no opposition. From America, they've got no opposition. From Europe, no opposition. And from the Arab and Muslim countries, no opposition except Iran and the regional allies like Syria. So there's nothing stopping them from doing something psychotic like this. That's what's sad. I can't hear you all of a sudden. Give me a second.
I'm sorry, I have myself muted. But as far as the UAE and Saudi Arabia, of course, yeah, they're bought and paid for. But one of the things that my friend was speaking about, she said that the people on the ground, the citizens in all the Muslim majority countries, that's when they would basically throw the gauntlet down and say, that's it, we're done, Israel's done. Do you think that there will be a massive groundswell in countries like UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, as well as in places like Syria, Iran, Iraq, and what have you? Do you think there would be a huge groundswell and a push to go after Israel if they were to destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque?
Maybe. I really don't know. I'll tell you why. Because logically, you would you would obviously see more outrage than ever before. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
The position of the people is not the same of the governments. But the problem is that if you look at what happened now with Gaza, a lot of people in those same countries, like in Egypt and Jordan, they want to go out and protest, and they can't. Like, protests are shut down, and you're told to be quiet because Jordan and Egypt have ties with Israel, and they don't upset them. And they basically whip people into line and into making sure that any kind of protest movement or substantive dissent is fractured and broken up, so it's not effective. So they've gotten very good at quelling any kind of dissent towards Israel. And again, we're talking about neighboring countries like Jordan and Egypt, where you have a lot of Palestinians, you have a lot of Arabs. They know what's going on, but they can't open their mouths because they'll be punished. They'll be punished very severely. And again, these are the democracies that are never criticized in Western media because they serve Israeli interests and, of course, their Western allies. So yeah, that's the problem. You're not allowed to have dissent, even with something as bad as a Holocaust or maybe even something like the Al-Aqsa Mosque being destroyed. I don't know if those governments would last too long, but they would definitely try to shut people up.
Do you think? See, questions keep popping up in my head afterwards. Do you think that there will be more boldness from these countries if they were to, say, join BRICS, where they don't have the fear of Western hegemony or U.S. hegemony barreling down on their necks? Because I think part of this also has to deal with the economic implications of this, right? They're scared of what the United States can do, and it's like they basically got them by the throat. But if they were to be I don't want to use the word freed, but in a sense freed, would they be able to be more vocal against? Because I mean, look at DPRK, North Korea. They have been denying the existence of Israel since its inception, and of course, they're not afraid. Even though they're being sanctioned to hell. So my question is, like, what if they join BRICS?
Yeah, no, that's exactly the point. You like, don't get me wrong. Egypt, for example, they have their water being controlled essentially by Ethiopia, and Ethiopia has a sizable Jewish population, so Israel trying to exert influence through that way. They built a series of dams, and the Nile flows upriver. So basically, Egypt is deprived of water if those reservoirs get filled up. Both Egypt and Sudan, actually. So they've had a huge argument about that. And then when it comes to food, the Egyptians are dependent on American aid, and Egypt is the largest Arab population of any Arab country. Sorry. So they've got them by the throat with both food and water, and not to mention they have other measures of coercion that they can use against Egypt. So that's a huge headache. Now, Egypt did join BRICS, and so did Saudi Arabia, right? So you would think that, well, that makes them free. The problem is it doesn't. Like, BRICS is not going to come and replace or take away those threats to the food supply and the water supply and the aid, the amount of enormous aid that the US gives to Egypt. Not because they like Egypt. It's only for coercion, right? People need to understand that. People think US aid is like some charitable thing. It's not. It's a mafia style, measure of keeping control over someone. That's what it is. So that the problem is just when you kind of answered the question for me, because you mentioned North Korea. I mean, I can give you Syria as an example as well. Syria has also never accepted Israel since the beginning, and the whole problem is because they carved up Syria into smaller countries. So that in and of itself, Sykes-Picot and then Balfour led to many of the problems we're seeing today. And countries at the end of the day have to decide which path they're going to go on. The Syria has been sanctioned. It's right now being invaded by these Turkish-backed groups because it refuses to accept the existence of Israel and the fact that Israel is illegally annexed to a part of Syria. And it's no one can say that Saudi Arabia doesn't have its own resources and could have gone a different way. They did at one point. In the 70s there was an oil embargo against the West and their support for Israel. And they got rid of the king and made sure that stuff doesn't happen again. So even if you do have a pro-Arab and a pro-Palestinian stance, they'll just find ways to coerce you, unfortunately. And that same thing happened with Egypt. They've been subdued, and the same thing with Saudi Arabia. So we can't say that they didn't try. They certainly had very, very different positions before in the past. But now they have a stranglehold on these countries, threats of assassination, and to the food and water supply that I guess it makes it impossible. But again, you look at countries like Syria and Iran and Korea. They chose, despite all the risk, to have the correct position, and they pay for it through with blood, and they've lost tons of people, and they've been bombed and sanctioned and invaded and occupied by the West, by Israel, because of that position, because it's a principled one. So you have to sometimes have that principled position no matter what.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, that's a good segue into Syria right now. There are allegedly there are resistance groups or rebel groups that they're calling them, that is moving in. And this is actually some latest developments within the last hour or so. Let's just take a listen to this, and then I want to get your thoughts on the other side.
Take a look at your screen right there, as the New York Times now reporting that Iranian troops are fleeing from Syria following a rebel offensive. The Israel War Room calling those troops, quote, terrorists, and adding, quote, good riddance. Iran's terrorist army was only in Syria to facilitate attacks on Israeli and Arab civilians by Hezbollah. As of this, all of this rather happening as insurgents pursue a shock offensive against Syrian President Bashar Assad that quickly captured Aleppo, another key city, and a string of towns across the country's northwest area. Now, unlike 10 years ago, when Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah helped Assad's forces retake Aleppo, this time the president does appear to be mostly on his own. Russia is, of course, preoccupied with its war with Ukraine, and Hezbollah has been significantly weakened by its year-long fight with Israel. I do want to talk about this and other developments.
So just your thoughts on that before I ask my first question.
Well, I just find the Israeli wording funny, but in any case, yeah, so the situation now is very simple, because Erdogan has come out and spilled the beans and said that he's behind the whole thing. I mean, we knew this anyway, because in the north you have the Turkish army occupying Idlib, and the groups that they're backing, they're mainly HTS. So HTS is basically, it stands for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. That is a rebrand of Al-Nusra Front, and that's a rebrand of Al-Qaeda. It's Al-Qaeda. They can rebrand as many times as they like. It's Al-Qaeda. Al-Jolani, who's the leader, who they're putting like some monkey in a suit and then dressing him up with Zelensky's wardrobe now. That guy, he's literally in a photo with if I'm not mistaken, with al-Baghdadi, with the ISIS flag on the wall behind, in the background. So he was in ISIS, he was in Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then he brought Al-Qaeda into Syria, not by himself, of course, but with the help of others, and now he's in charge of its rebranded affiliate. So, they can say whatever they want, but they can't change their spots. I mean, they are who they are. They are takfiri jihadists, although it's not fair to use that word jihad, because it's used in an Islamophobic context a lot of the time. But these guys, they call themselves mujahideen. They claim to be religious fighters, and they claim to be the real Muslims, and they are sectarian. They're very, very sectarian, and that's incompatible with how Syria is. Syria is a secular country, officially, and also in the societies, in the social fabric of the country. It's always been that way, because you have so many different groups, and to call them Syrian. I mean, the problem with a lot of these rebels is they're not Syrian. They're just not Syrian. You can go watch their videos. They're not speaking Arabic. They're speaking Uzbek. They're speaking Turkish, and I wanted to say Eastern Turkic, which is what Uyghurs speak. Because you have Uyghur fighters. You've got thousands of Uyghurs that are there, which is weird, right? Because they say China's committing genocide against them, but they're in Syria fighting instead of in China, right? So just a side note. So you've got thousands of Uyghurs there, thousands of people that come from Chechnya. In the earlier years, you had even higher numbers of people that have come from Libya, from Tunisia. As a matter of fact, a lot of the weapons that the CIA brought in for these so-called rebels came from Libya. After they had gotten rid of Gaddafi, they just basically stole his weapons and shipped them there. So they're not Syrian, a lot of these rebels. So they want us to believe that Assad doesn't represent Syrians, but you're telling me a bunch of fighters from Uzbekistan do? I mean, what is this? It's ridiculous. We're not going to deny that there are problems in the country. There's a lot of discontent. You can't say that, a large portion of Syrians are upset with the government. They are. There is a large portion, but I think it would be wrong to say that the majority of them wanted everything that's happened since 2011. I don't agree with that whatsoever. The country is worse off than how it was in 2011 in every way. The Israelis control more land. The Americans control 1/3 of the country, are stealing oil. Turkey has its troops in there. Remember, Turkey is also a NATO country. You've got all of the oil being stolen, all of the crops being stolen. The economy is destroyed. The inflation is up. I don't even know by how much percent. I remember in 2011, $1 was like 50 Syrian liras or Syrian pounds. Now it's like 13,000 or something ridiculous. So they've destroyed the country, and they're trying to make a NATO-backed, coup, regime change operation look like it's a homegrown uprising. It's just not. Again, like I said, some people would want an uprising in Syria, certainly, but not in these numbers, and not from outside of Syria and then calling them Syrians. I mean, so they're trying to, and of course this all relates to what's happening in Gaza. They want to break the supply lines. Syria is the key to Palestine and Lebanon. Everything goes through Syria. Literally, just pull up a map and look at the map. It has to go through Syria. So, they've wanted to get rid of Syria because it has always supported the Palestinian cause. So they want to get rid of Assad and put some puppet government in place that is not a threat to Israel. And a lot of these rebels are openly saying we have no problem with Israel. They are openly saying this to the press in the last days. Jolani and his commanders, they're saying we have no problem with Israel. I think Jolani said something like he hopes Israel will plant a rose in the Syrian garden, or whatever the hell that means. So he's a traitor. Too many people in Syria have died. Too many people have suffered sanctions and war to defend the Palestinian cause, and many of them Syrians. For this terrorist to come here and this head chopping terrorist to come here and say that he just wants to normalize ties with Israel, he's a scumbag.
Wow. Speaking of scumbags, let me share just for people to see this gentleman that you were referring to. His name is Al-Muhammad Al-Jolani.
Sorry, just his name is Jolani, which is the Golan Heights, which is what Israel occupies. He should be busy fighting them, especially since his rebels, so-called rebels, literally took the areas around it today. Israel, they're going in the other direction to Damascus. That tells you everything you need to know.
What?
Yeah, I'm not
sure. Let's see just this part.
Only one sect, as Assad's regime has done.
Listening to you speaking, you've gone through quite the transformation. Once an Al-Qaeda leader, your group has had affiliations with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS, and now you are projecting this image of a moderate leader and a moderate group. What is HTS right now?
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is one of the factions in the region, just like all the others. Now we're talking about a larger project. We're talking about building Syria. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is merely one detail of this dialogue, and it may dissolve at any time. It's not an end in itself, but a means to perform a task confronting this regime. Once that task is complete, it will transition to a state of governance, institutions, and so on. I believe that everyone in life goes through phases and experiences, and these experiences naturally increase a person's awareness. A person in their 20s will have a different personality than someone in their 30s or 40s, and certainly someone in their 50s.
So are those days behind you?
Sometimes it's essential to adjust to reality, and because someone who rigidly clings to certain ideas and principles without flexibility cannot effectively lead societies or navigate complex conflicts like the one happening in Syria.
People listening.
That's a huge swing from being a Western-backed terrorist to being, now, we're for the safety and freedom of Syria. I'm like, but you were doing some pretty gnarly stuff back there.
Yeah, they were. I mean, again, when I'm saying this guy's a head-chopping terrorist, I mean, are we exaggerating? This is what they did. They did it in Iraq and they did it in Syria. They were literally beheading people and committing, unspeakable crimes. I think we all know the list of crimes that ISIS and Al Qaeda carried out. And again, he was affiliated with both. He was a member of both. He worked with both. To come here and act like they've rebranded, I'm sorry. Look, you can't. We're not talking about like some person who is sitting at home and reading a bunch of political books and going through some kind of enlightenment. This guy murdered people. He killed people with he used political violence, used terrorism of the highest kind to destabilize Syria, and now he acts like he represents Syrian society or something. And look, man, I'll tell you something. Syria doesn't need people like him. It was already diverse and it already had tolerance and coexistence. I think coexistence is the better word, because tolerance implies you're kind of suffering someone's presence, right? Whereas coexistence is peaceful, right? That's how it was. Again, that doesn't mean you didn't have extremist people like him in Syrian society. Of course you did, but they were an unheard of minority. They didn't have any political clout or any kind of military power to do any of the horrible things that they did. And now that social fabric is being threatened, and honestly, I don't know how many decades it's going to take to rebuild. And also, like I was saying before, this guy is his fighters are not even a lot of them are not even Syrian. So if his movement was as grassroots and as organic as he claims it is, where he's acting like he wants to take over from the state, he wouldn't have to bring in tens of thousands, or I don't know how many how many fighters have come in since 2011. It's probably in hundreds of thousands now. But he wouldn't have had to fight, with foreigners in his ranks to such a degree, to the point where we're talking about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people coming in from other countries. This is a very big difference from having an alliance and then importing fighters, importing mercenaries, and people who are simply not Syrian and calling that a revolution, an uprising. It's just not. And I don't trust anything he's saying. This guy's been groomed by the CIA, by the Americans. Remember, he was imprisoned. The name escapes me now. It's not Abu Ghraib. It's another jail the Americans had in Iraq. They had al-Baghdadi in there, who was his former boss, and I believe Jolani as well was in that same prison. The CIA used the fact that it had all these extremists in these jail cells to go and recruit and groom them. It's clandestine human intelligence recruitment. That's what it is. So they get people like this guy and they manipulate them and teach them, a little bit of tricks and give them the weapons that they need to wreak havoc and chaos on the country. Just like they did with Bin Laden. Bin Laden, he was a CIA project, the Mujahideen and the Maktabat al-Khadamat, the Bureau of Services that was run by the CIA and Bin Laden in Peshawar, importing all these foreign fighters. It's the same playbook. They used this in the 1980s, and then Al-Qaeda grew out of that, and they kept the infrastructure and the tricks and the weapons that the CIA had given them to then turn against basically to wreak havoc against the rest of the world. And then they brought that to Syria and Iraq. So they've used this playbook before. The CIA know what they're doing, and there's a big role that British intelligence are playing in here as well, and Turkish intelligence as well, and not to mention the Israelis. It's really a group project, right? And you can't call any of that homegrown or organic when you've got before, definitely Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they played a bigger role in earlier on, but still Turkey, Israel, Britain, the UK, France, Germany, the EU, all these countries working to destabilize Syria. That's not homegrown. And the damage that these people have done is going to take decades and decades to fix, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is, from what it sounds, is just a means, to the end goal is really just to replace Assad and to put in a puppet. Really. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, I just want to say that's it, because as much criticism as you have of al-Assad, and this is the funny thing, is because there is a lot of criticism to be made, but it's not the things that they're making up, like chemical weapons attacks, okay. which shows you that they're not genuine in making the country better. They just make things up to conform with the red lines imposed by America. Remember, Obama said that his red line, as if you run Syria, is a chemical weapons attack. And then conveniently, we have a chemical weapons attack. It's so funny how they sing in chorus and in synchronicity with what the U.S. administration sets as a line for military intervention, just by coincidence. So I just want to say that, yes, there are lots of criticisms to be made, but it's not the things that they're making up. And as much criticism as you want to say, it doesn't justify the action being taken, just like it doesn't justify invading Iraq to get rid of Saddam Hussein, or invading Libya with bombing Libya with NATO, and then sending in other rebel groups that are very similar to destabilize the country. And Libya never recovered, and Iraq is still under U.S. occupation. As bad as you want to claim Saddam or Gaddafi were, and again, a lot of the claims they make are lies. But even if you want to believe them all, it doesn't justify the West getting involved, and it doesn't justify in Syria either.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to jump into what's going on between Ukraine and Russia. There was a interesting turn of events that had happened a couple weeks ago, where essentially there was a go-ahead by the Biden administration for Ukraine to use ICBMs, which is intercontinental ballistic missiles, to go into Russia. And it basically talked about how Joe Biden reversed his position. Let's just get into this just a little bit, and then I'll talk to you about that as well.
With a major escalation in the war in Ukraine, as Russia allegedly fires its first intercontinental ballistic missile of the war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reporting the use of the weapon overnight, saying the speed and altitude of that missile matched that of an ICBM that was carrying a conventional warhead. Now, this has not yet been confirmed by the other international bodies, but the use of an ICBM would signal a major change in Russian war tactics, since the powerful rockets are meant to carry nuclear warheads. It's a chilling reminder of Russia's capabilities, especially coming just days after Russian President Vladimir Putin lowered the country's threshold for using nuclear weapons. And that change coming as a direct response to President Biden allowing U.S.-approved weapons to be used in Ukrainian counteroffensives. Let's bring in NewsNation's Kelly Meyer.
So your position on that, because from what I've heard from people like Scott Ritter has said that this is a major development and bringing us even closer to a nuclear war. I just want to get your thoughts on it.
That's really it in a nutshell. And what the United States did is they approved the use of these ATACMs. Okay, so these are basically long-range rockets that are fired from American systems, and at the same time, Ukraine was given go-ahead to use a Storm Shadow or several Storm Shadow missiles, which are provided by the UK. They're built by the UK, and they can go about, they have a range of about 250 kilometers. So you can strike deep into Russia. If you're on the border and you fire, you can strike deep into Russia, and that needs British military personnel on site to be able to use. Otherwise, if it's in the hands of anybody else, it's not going to work. They have special. These systems need to be armed, and then they have to supervise the Ukrainians while using them. So the point here is that both the United States and UK are there when Ukraine is using those systems against Russia. They're not just supplying them; they're also helping to fire them and then use them and guide them to their targets. And what Putin did afterwards is he lowered the threshold for the use of Russian nuclear weapons, which is really not a good sign, you know, because before the threshold was that if you hit Russia with nuclear weapons, they'll strike back with nuclear weapons. Very straightforward. And here he changed it to if even if a country that doesn't have nuclear weapons, like Ukraine, fires at Russia with the support of a country that does have nuclear weapons, like Britain or America, that's enough for Russia to strike back with nuclear weapons. So they don't even have to use nukes for the Russians to perceive it as a threat. And honestly, I mean, it makes sense in a way, because the countries that do have nuclear weapons also have long-range missile systems like the Storm Shadow or the ATACMS, or of course, going even higher than you have ICBMs. Now, what the Russians did is that in response to the Storm Shadows being used, they fired an intercontinental ballistic missile, which has a range of thousands of kilometers, that it can literally traverse continents. And usually you will have several nuclear warheads inside of one ICBM, so maybe up to 12, for example, or 8, depending on the model. And they didn't put a nuke inside of it, or any nuclear weapons inside of that ICBM, but they fired it as a message to the West that, you know, you are making this very serious for us. And if you look at the video, by the way, of these things hitting, I mean, Jesus Christ, it looks like God is sending thunder down from the sky. It's terrifying. It's really terrifying. And I don't think people understand how serious it is. By the time the Russians get angry enough to fire a nuclear missile, we'll have like 12 minutes before London, Birmingham, and, you know, Scotland are turned into ash. 12 minutes. And most people in England don't have stockpiles. They don't have a bunker. They have nowhere to hide, and they will die of starvation. And I don't think it's wise to start poking the Russians, because obviously they are responding in a way that is bad for everyone. I mean, they won't just hit Britain, of course. They will hit the rest of continental Europe. Storm Shadows are made by France as well, so they might hit Paris. And of course, they'll hit the United States. I really don't understand how this benefits anybody. You know, the problem is that the people making these decisions, they do have bunkers and places to hide. Well, we don't. Okay, so war is not good for us if in case the conventional weapons weren't already bad enough. Nuclear war is not good for anyone, okay?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and it feels like Russia basically said, you know, this is a warning shot. They say to the West, fuck around and find out. And right now, it's like, we don't want to find out.
We don't.
That's the issue. I don't want to find out. I know you don't want to find out. I know everybody and their mama don't want to find out. So my thing is just like, and the funny thing is, everybody's, who was saying it? I had somebody else on earlier this week, but they were saying cooler heads have to prevail. And the cooler heads that we know of right now are Vladimir Putin, and also you know, the head,
is it
the head of Iran. It's like, these are the cooler heads. These are the ones who are told that they're the maniacs, but yet they're the ones who are being the most measured. Russia and Iran are saying, you guys don't want to do this. And the United States and Israel and all these Western countries are like these little pipsqueak little, you know, annoying kids that keep trying. They keep trying them. I'm sorry, I'm getting into my hood side. They keep trying them, and next thing you know, Russia, China, and Iran, and all these other countries, you know, U.S. is going to catch a fade. I'm sorry, that's the only way I can explain it.
No, but look, the thing is, it is funny because we're told that they're the maniacs, but they are the cooler heads, as you were correctly pointing out. Yeah. The problem is that even they have limits, you know, like as much as let's you know, imagine as much as Putin wants to avoid nuclear war, the guy is still leading a giant, the largest country on earth, Russia. You know, he has to save face at one point. He can't allow these kinds of shots. You know, that's a problem. I mean, I'm not saying it's like, we all have to die in a nuclear fire because Putin has to save face. No, I'm saying they're going to keep pushing until, you know, it becomes impossible not to retaliate. And I think this is just dumb military strategy, and it's dumb on every level, in every domain. We don't have to go through the whole list. I'll give you another example of how dumb the West is. About 2 weeks ago, so I was at the UN. I was covering the Iran nuclear deal. That you don't hear much about that because the Ukraine war killed the renegotiation. They were trying to renegotiate the U.S. coming back into the nuclear deal, and then the Ukraine war started, and then everybody dropped the ball, especially the Americans, right? Because they're the ones that are not in the deal. Everybody still is, right? So what happened 2 weeks ago? You had the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. So that's the UN nuclear watchdog. It's the IAEA. They're the ones that monitor the Iranian nuclear sites. They under the deal, they had their inspectors allowed to go inside of the facilities, take measurements and samples. They have cameras that film 24/7. They have special seals that they put on, these like tamper-proof seals. I mean, there's more transparency in an Iranian nuclear site than there ever was in an Israeli one. I mean, Israel haven't even signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, right? They haven't even signed that. So Iran have gone above and beyond, and then the U.S. pulled out and ruined that. So they've been trying to fix it because the Iranians obviously don't want to be under sanctions. They don't even want a nuclear weapon, so it's pointless, right? The thing is, the director goes there and they took him to Natanz and Fordo. These are two facilities there, two of the largest, and the Iranians showed that they have brand new centrifuges. Those are the cylinders that enrich uranium that are ready to go, and they weren't threatening him, but they were showing that to him as a kind of extending an olive branch to the West, that because he's going to go back to Vienna, and then they have the Board of Governors meeting, which they did, and they know that the West is going to receive the message that Iran can cap its enrichment at 60%, and they will not bring online these new centrifuges if they don't attack Iran at the Board of Governors. So because that's something they do a lot, and they even said that they'll allow the IAEA to send 4 new nuclear inspectors because Iran had kind of blacklisted some of them. Iran basically during the last 3 years, they stopped cooperating with the nuclear deal to a certain extent, and that's allowed in the nuclear deal. It says if the U.S. pulls out and puts sanctions on Iran, Iran is not bound by the deal. It's how a contract works. So they're still in the agreement, but they're willing to tone it down. That's the point. And the guy goes to Vienna, Grossi, and he obviously delivers the message to Britain and the US and UK and France. And what do? They just go ahead and they decide to condemn Iran at the Board of Governors. And the next morning, the Iranians bring the brand new centrifuges online. It's like, you can't reason with the West. They're just dumb. They just want to shoot themselves in the foot every day. They whine about Iran building a nuclear weapon and then do everything in the world to piss the Iranians off to make sure they build a nuclear weapon. So, it's obviously a bit more complicated than that. There's a fatwa, which is a religious decree against nuclear weapons in Iran, issued by the supreme leader. So it's religiously forbidden to build one, because it's a weapon of mass destruction. So they wouldn't do it anyway. But you have lawmakers in Iran saying now, like openly calling for the supreme leader Khamenei to reverse that fatwa and allow them to build a nuclear bomb, because they can see you can't reason with Israel with a ceasefire. The Americans won't come back to the nuclear deal, and they list all their reasons and so on. But they feel that Iran's existence is being threatened, much like Russia feels by NATO. And you listen to Western media; they constantly complain about Russia and complain about Iran, and then they defend all of the military actions and all the sanctions taken against Russia and Iran that leads to confrontation and escalation. You can't reason. It's like talking to a wall.
Yeah, honestly, and this is just my personal opinion, but I understand, the whole not wanting to build a weapon of mass destruction when it comes to Iran. But my thing is, it's like the U.S. is too close to doing to Iran what it did to Libya, and this is exactly why North Korea has a nuke, because it is a deterrent to keep the West out of their countries. I'll be honest with you, it's like, it's in the United States, and we all know this, the United States has no business telling anybody that they need to put their nukes down when you still got a stockpile of over 1,000. Like, stop it. And it just gets on my nerves, when the United States does this. I
mean, the only country in the world that's murdered civilians with nuclear weapons is the US, period.
Yeah, definitely.
And then they went into Korea a few years later, and they killed 20% of the population. That's why North Korea has nuclear weapons, because the United States murdered 20% of them. They ran out of targets to bomb. They literally ran out of targets to bomb, just got bored. That's how much they destroyed Korea. and then they paint the Koreans as being crazy. I mean, if Korea did that to the United States, they never stop whining about it, you know. And then they want to paint the Koreans as crazy. I mean, again, this is a problem. It's like if you are measured and cool and calm, they make fun of you and bully you and keep killing you. It's like I mean, I don't know, you know, I don't even know why they bother having diplomatic corps in the West. It's like they just use diplomats to deliver threats and spy on people. They don't actually engage in anything diplomatic. They're genuinely diplomatic. And then, of course, after that, you look at Vietnam, the amount of napalm they dropped there, the Agent Orange, to the point that even the US troops got sick. And then Gulf War syndrome was another, you know, great example of that. But it just goes to show you like this mass ecocide and killing of not just the people, but their country, to the point that 50 years later, you can get your arm blown off by a mine, or your kids are going to have, you know, birth defects because of your DNA being corrupted. I mean, like, and then they wonder why these countries don't like the US. I mean, come on, you know, they don't have a problem inherently with the US. It's just they don't want to get genocided and treated like that. That's all. It's really simple.
Yeah, very simple. In fact, there's actually in 7 minutes, there's going to be an event in Washington, D.C. This is from Danny Haifong. He says today, December 7th at 4 p.m. Eastern, says I'll be showing a huge live event in D.C., sending the message, no nuclear war with Russia. It's going to be joined by Scott Ritter, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, Ted Postal. It's going to be Margaret Kimberly and Max Blumenthal. So they're having an event that's going to be from 4 to 7 about resisting nuclear war. So if you guys are interested in that after this stream, then you guys can also go over there if you would like to. But, you know, that's one of the things that we're trying to basically sound the alarm on.
It's shocking. We have to say this. You would think the Cold War was like enough to put everyone on edge, because there was genuine fear all the time that, you know, the Russian bloc, the Eastern bloc, would hit the West with nukes and vice versa. And now it's actually it's even worse than back then, which is difficult even for me to kind of digest, because you know, you look at how people were afraid of the threat of nuclear war back then. Today they're not, because they've been so brainwashed. It's I mean, it's like they don't even give it a second thought, and it is a very real threat.
Yeah. I have 2 more questions. Do you have time?
Yeah.
Okay. First question I wanted to ask you is about the subsequent martial law that was declared in South Korea, and then the fallout from it when President Yoon tried to you know, implement martial law, but then the parliament said no, uno reverse. You know, they said no, you don't. So what are your thoughts on that? Because it feels like President Yoon really is just a puppet of the United States, and any type of more left-wing or people-powered swelling that happens within the government, they use that puppet to squash it. But then, because of their laws that are in place, they said, you can't do that. So what are your thoughts on what happened earlier this week?
I mean, South Korea is basically a U.S. colony. I don't remember the exact number of troops.
Right?
I think they've got 25,000. It could be 28,000 troops, something ridiculous. And dozens of military bases. You know, yes, there's a DMZ and there's a ceasefire line. It doesn't need all of this U.S. personnel. It just doesn't. It's an excuse to plant a bunch of American service personnel there. It's a colony. And you should remember also that not only militarily, but culturally even, there's a huge amount of U.S. influence, soft power, that's used to project you know, America and American corporations and American culture and lifestyle. I mean, all around the world, of course, America uses that soft power to promote itself, but it's especially strong in South Korea. And if you look at also the laws that you know, in wartime, the Americans control their military, the South Korean military. It's not South Korea. So yeah, you know, it's not up to the South Koreans to run their own country. If you look at the German constitution, actually, their constitution was drafted as well in a way that put the Allies as the people really running the country. You know, so the post-World War II infrastructure, when it came to countries like Japan, Germany, and then of course South Korea, this is in the 50s. they engineered the laws in those countries in a way to grant privileged control to the West, and especially America. And it exists to this day, that infrastructure, but people just don't know about it.
Yeah, I honestly kind of laughed when the parliament said, yeah, no, you're not doing this. Don't get stupid, President Yoon. You're not gonna make this into whatever you want it to be. And then people are like, well, what if Donald Trump does this? And I'm like, what if Joe Biden does it? The exact same thing. Like, and not only that, but I feel like we're so subdued here that they don't need to. All they got to do is build more cop cities, which they're doing right now, and then just bash us in the head whenever we, step out of line. So I feel like we're already at a police state.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. My final question is regarding TikTok. Right now, January 19th will be considered basically the last day. So if nothing is done, if the sale of TikTok is not to an American company by ByteDance, then TikTok will be essentially shut down within the United States. I'd just like to get your thoughts on that. And there's a lot of connections between shutting down TikTok and Israel, because they keep trying to link it to China. But in reality, I see a lot of people from AIPAC and a lot of people who are from the Israel lobby that are actually going up against TikTok. So your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's entirely linked to the Palestinian case. They're just angry that people like me and other left-wing shows and hosts and journalists and people like yourself that were talking, being outspoken about the genocide in Gaza, that we had videos going viral on TikTok and educating people. It wasn't even just about talking about Gaza. I mean, I was doing things like going through the surnames of Israeli prime ministers, how every single one of them was changed, like, because they wanted to sound more Middle Eastern, right? And it makes them go ballistic, because it destroys their whole Zionist project. You just expose them as a bunch of European colonizers, and they hate that so much. So they've been trying to make it about China for a while. And this goes back to Trump. Trump originally tried to force the sale of TikTok to Microsoft or any other American corporation. And it's so funny how brazen they are with it. Like, you have to sell it to an American one. It's because of Silicon Valley. They want to control the flow of information and the production of software and hardware in America, right? Because traditionally, all the big software companies have been based in Silicon Valley. And hardware. So they want to make sure that there's no competition coming out of China, whether it's cell phones or whether it's software. So both hardware and software. And the irony is that they use spyware as an excuse. They claim that China is spying on people through the app and through Huawei phones. I mean, come on, are you going to sit there and pretend like we just forgot about the NSA and Snowden? Really? I mean, look, let me tell you something, man. I've been writing a book for the last few months, okay, about cybersecurity. And this is like a Bible, a cybersecurity Bible, everything, phones, computers, all of it. The amount of crap that is in Western software and Western phones is unbelievable. I'm going to put this out in the next couple of months. But, the problem is not from China. I have issues with China because their hardware is just, it's not up to standard to people with a threat model. Like journalists, like there's stuff that they need to fix, but it's not what America's claiming, where it's spying on people. No. That's got nothing to do with it. It's mostly American corporations that is, Facebook, Skype, Google. You can go and look at that graph from the NSA, that slide where they show all the companies they're recruited to give them backdoor access. It's every major tech company, the top 10, Yahoo, Microsoft, they were all working with the NSA. You can't say the same about the Chinese, and they don't even have that kind of philosophy, right? They conduct business and they look at software and hardware development in a completely different way. They're not interested in exploiting it for the intelligence agencies. I'm sure that they have some kind of deal to a certain degree. Like, let's not be naive, but to compare that to the Americans and then say it's worse than in America and act like the NSA is not the one spying on people. Come on. And GCHQ, they like to leave out GCHQ's name, but it's both GCHQ and NSA. In any case, man, I'm telling you, there's no issue from TikTok in terms of their app spying on people. This is all about shutting dissent down. They just don't want people being educated. They're afraid of that. And social media allowed people to unplug from legacy media like television, radio, and print. So that's what they're really angry about. And yeah, like I know my stuff when it comes to tech, and they're lying about China. Like Chinese phones are not the solution. They're not, and I'll explain that later when the book is out. But it's not as bad as what they're saying. They're lying about that. They just want America to control that largest app so they can ban people.
Yeah, because I mean, look, I'm gonna be real with you. I saw what Huawei came out with, and I was like, why aren't we doing that here? But
they make good phones, but if it's about security, it's not the best phone to get. They lack the hardware. It's a hardware issue. I don't know why they don't do it. I'm not saying they're doing it intentionally. It's just it's not a secure phone. And yeah, I'm putting all this stuff in the book because I realized no one's done it, and also they like it's just unfair kind of having people to fend for themselves. You know what I mean? There's just no knowledge out there. A lot of this tech stuff is really complicated as well, and it's not well explained. It's done by brilliant people, but they don't necessarily explain it the easiest. So yeah, but you look at the stuff Huawei's putting out and other phones, they're really brilliant. I mean, they're just innovation. It's funny because in capitalism, innovation promotes competition, and they always talk about how great capitalism is, and they want to impose it on the rest of the world. But what they really want is the ultimate form of capitalism. It's monopoly, complete ultimate control. They're not interested in competition. So when China start coming out with great cameras and great phones, and fast phones, they sanction them, they ban them from using the Play Store. A million things, and now TikTok is just another iteration of that. It's sanction warfare,
basically. And honestly, I'm just excited. I'm actually excited to see what the growth of Chinese companies, and I would love to see. I'm aching for a multipolar world, where I can see. I would like to see more science coming out of places like Iran, right? Because I'm hearing that the Iranians are like brilliant when it comes to STEM, right? And I'm just like, man, what can they actually do if we didn't have sanctions on them? If we actually just left them alone and let them do their thing, what can come out of it? I'm just excited to see humanity just leap forward,
Yep. No,
I mean, y'all gave us algebra, so what else can you give us? I want to see.
Yeah. A lot of people forget that was Arab and Persian scientists who revolutionized modern medicine and maths, and all of it. And yeah, they like to paint that region in a very negative way, and they do the same thing with Southeast Asia and the Russians, and it's all about racism to promote imperialism.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let everybody know, where can they find you, and what do you have coming up next? Because I know that you have a lot going
on. So people can follow my work on youtube.com/Richard Medhurst. And yeah, for the moment, so I've got to surrender to the police station in February. So they extended my case, and I'm still under investigation for terrorism, if you can believe it. So yeah, they're very afraid of my work, and they're trying to get into my phones as well, which are journalistic tools, and it's outrageous, honestly.
Wow. Look, I am hoping that this all blows over, and that your freedom is assured, and you are free to continue to do the journalism work that you have been doing. I also want to give a shout out to you for all the work that you've done, in speaking out for Julian Assange, especially now that he is freed. Mission accomplished when it comes to the work that you and all of you have been doing as far as free speech. So I just want to give you a personal thank you for that. And, thank you so very much for being the bold voice that we all need, and being an example for people like me who are just babies in this media space. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate your kind words very much. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you very much for being generous with your time too. I know we went a little over, so I thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, really. And I'm glad we got to touch on so many topics. It's not you know, enriching and fulfilling to just do one or two. We have to go all the way.
we gotta eat, you know, some of everything. We have to have a buffet, you know what I'm saying?
There you go. Yeah.
All right, man. I will talk to you in a little bit, and hopefully I can have you back on sooner than last time. So
absolutely. You know, I'd really like to do this more often if that's cool with you. I mean, I don't know what your broadcast schedule is, but you just let me know when, and I'm ready.
Yeah. If you wish, I mean, we can do it maybe like every couple months or every month. Whatever you're cool with. You know.
I'm down every month, honestly. It will be great because I mean, there's Christmas coming up now, but I'm also going to be, you know, you were showing that anti-war event earlier, the one in DC. We've got our own thing also against nuclear war. We've got No to NATO in the UK.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be hosting that once a month from next month onwards. And you know, doing more you know, appearances and hostings, all these kinds of things. So I'm absolutely down. Let's do it.
All right, man. Look, you know how to get me. All right, man. Thank you so very much. And look, free Palestine, free the world, and free Richard.
Yeah, that's true. I gotta have my own slogan now.
Yeah. Love you, bro. Take care.
You too. Thanks, man. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
All right. So, look, let me tell you something. If you guys have not subscribed to Richard Medhurst, please make sure to do so. If you want to be educated on what's going on geopolitically, there are certain people who I think that you should listen to. Richard Medhurst is one. Danny Haifong, my comrade Nick from RBN, right? Margaret Kimberly. Onion Parampil is really good. You have Jeffrey Sachs, Michael Hudson. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her name. Ann Garrison as well. She's also part of Black Agenda Report. Abby Martin. There's so many people who are really good on geopolitical issues, and these geopolitical issues affect us here at home. And sometimes what affects us here at home also affects us there. And so one of the quotes that I forgot, was it Lenin who said that imperialism is the highest form of capitalism? Or is it fascism? One of those two. But the thing is, like, we have to know what they're doing abroad so that we know what they're about to do here at home. And this is why it's so important. And you don't have to know all the details, right? But you need to know some of it in order to know they're up to some bullshit here. So please make sure to tune in to a lot of these voices that are anti-imperialist journalists, right? Make sure to listen to them because they are the ones who care about sovereignty of the peoples of those regions. And they're not going to stand behind empire, and they're not going to stand behind the big corporations that just want to, you know, take the resources and exploit the people there abroad. Okay. Got to be careful with who we get our information from too, as well. And one of the best sources is people like Richard Medhurst. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have him on. And you saw how great he was. So thank you very much. So that being said, did you like the stream? Go ahead. Thank you. All right, so let's get to the chat. But first, before we do that, I would like to give shout out to patrons on Patreon because without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. You guys make this possible. So let's take a look at the tiers. Here we go. We have Mega Jaybefaunters. super duper Jaybefaunters, super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters, Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And of course, I thank Miss Carolyn Wansley last night for becoming a new member. But if you would like to be a new member, you can too. But just remember this one little itty bitty thing. My channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you very much to all of you. Also, just to let you guys know, for our chapter here in Orlando, mutual aid chapter, we're raising money for our next mutual aid function that we're going to try to do. I would like to try to do it in maybe mid-January or early February. We got to meet to figure that out. But we're, of course, raising money for our next mutual aid chapter. And all of the money goes to doing mutual aid. And it goes to doing, typically we do toiletries for the people who are unhoused in our area. So that's what we'll be doing. Also, in a couple weeks, I and maybe some others of the RBN Orlando chapter, we're going to be teaming up with Real Orlando again, as they're going to do their own mutual aid event, and we're going to assist them with that. So I am excited for that as well. And yes, I will go live for that event just so that you guys can see. And I want people to be encouraged to be able to do more mutual aid on the ground too. So that's going to be great. Also, just as a shout out to, let me share my screen here. A shout out to Rome. Of course, he is locked up right now. And I cannot get into the reasons why. So please do not ask, because I can't get into it. But he has done a lot for the community, and I would like for us to do for him. So if you guys can, you guys can donate to him. This will help him out, commissary, as well as any future legal funds, things like that. So thank you very much for that as well. So if you have that there, I put that the link to his GoFundMe in the chat too. So with that being said, you guys got that there. Now, another thing that I wanted to get into before we get into the chat, what was it that I was going to get into? Oh, yes. And I wanted to share this as well. So many of you also know that I'm letting the cat out of the bag. I've been on dialysis for almost 17 years. And so I'm attempting to get on the list for kidney transplant. So now I can start letting people know, if you would like to get tested for being a possible donor, you can. Here is the link so that you guys can go. You can be anywhere in the United States to get yourself tested. And really, you just get a blood test, go through a questionnaire, and you can see if you are eligible for that as well. So you guys can go to tgh.org/living kidney donor if you guys would like to test to see if you are a match with me to donate a kidney. And even if you're not, you can be a donor for somebody. Just to let you guys know, there's over 100,000 people in this country that are waiting for organ transplants, and almost 90,000 of them are waiting for a kidney alone. So look, there's a lot of people who are in need right now. And if you can help somebody else, then you can. And kidneys from living donors typically last longer than a kidney from a deceased donor. So then if you guys would like to help out anybody else as well, you guys can do that too. So thank you very much for that. Now, let's get into the chat. I want to say my hellos, my how you doings. I'm going to check on Rumble really quick, say hellos to people, and let's go there. Hang on. I think I'm coming up with something. I got the sniffles. It has been I can't tell y'all how many times I sneezed today. I sneezed so much earlier today. I'm usually not sneezing like that, and for some reason it did. But anyways, sorry about that. Let's go into the the Rumble. Thank you very much to Adam Charlton. See if you can hide under a cynic. Oh my gosh. Thank you for your work, guys. Adam Charlton, I think you just gave me my first Rumble rant, like ever. I've never had a Rumble rant before. I think you literally just gave me my first Rumble rant. Thank you very much. He says, thank you for your work, guys. Thank you so very much, Adam Charlton. It means a lot. This is my first official Rumble rant ever, so this is special. I really appreciate it. Making the lights stay on up and here. Appreciate it very much. Yeah. Yes, really. Yeah, you're literally my first Rumble rant. Let's go into the Rockfin side. We got some Rockfins. All right, let me see. Let me make sure I have this. And then we'll get into the rest of the general chat. All right. All right. So we have Hempcar saying, Copper, I think it was a black site we had there. I read in the Military Space Journal, most of the region would feel safer if Iran had nukes. Seeing what they did to Iraq and Libya for dismantling, getting the nuke is probably their only hope of survival. And we didn't have to use it. Japan was already ready to surrender. Yeah, that's the thing. Especially, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan was like, why are you doing this? We're already, it's like somebody already having their hands up and then, you shoot them anyway. Like, you didn't have to, but you did, but they did. But then that was really as a sign to Russia to say, look what we can do. It's sadistic, it's sick. And that's what our country has done. He said, I'm bored. I can't read that. Says Iran's crime is that they exist and there's no deal with the West. They wanted to take them out at any cost. They want it all, including the world. One Times newspaper writer said, same with Fidel and their first supreme leader. They tried to be friendly with the West after the U.S. Holocaust. See their torture museum, Iran and Cuba have. They killed Martin Luther King Jr. and Fred Hampton. We have been a police state for some time. Schwartz has Judy Bari, 100 plus political prisoners, 100 million on the list, tens of thousands set up for special harassment, Mumia said. He said, not sure how credible this is. They say Saddam Hussein had a secret torture chamber. Something tells me that I'm skeptical about stuff like that. New York Post can be tabloidy if there's ever a word. But thank you very much, Hempcar. Let's go to the general chat. I just want to say my hellos to everybody who are just joining in, and some of you who may be new who are joining in for the first time. Pitchforks are coming, says liked and shared. Thank you very much, Pitchforks. Pitchforks are coming. Thank you. Max coming in saying, yay, Richard. Yes, thank you so very much. Quantum Alchemist says, JB and Richard, two of my absolute favorite streamers. Thank you very much. That means a lot. We have Adam Charlton says, I clicked that notification bell. Let's see if I get notified. All right. Thank you so very much. And also, if you don't feel like doing that, or if it misses, then you can also always subscribe to my Substack. So you guys have that there too. You get it straight from me. Devin Y says, two legends on one screen. Thank you. All right. Miguel says, the Maverick. Yes, the Maverick is here. Have no fear. The Maverick is here. It says, gold badge approved as the golden shiny hair of the Maverick. Lifts hair. Thank you so very much. Amanda coming in saying, JB, good to see you. All right. Miguel says, peace. My comrade from RBN, Nick, says, James is killing the game. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. You turned me on to people like Richard, so I appreciate it. Thank you so very much, Nick. It's so good to have you in here as well. Let me I missed a whole lot. Mouse says there's a direct Bush, Nixon, Trump mentorship lineage nobody ever really discusses. Well, yeah, I think you got to add some of them Democrats in there too. It's pretty direct though. Thank you very much. Tim Price, part of RB in Orlando chapter, says, speaking of, it's Pearl Harbor Day today. Oh, it is. Interesting. Thank you very much. Deborah B, thank you so much for tuning in. We Need Critical Thinking says Trump is a war profiteer and a military industrial complex salesman, and the impeaching in court thing was to get help neocon Trump elected to get out the vote, aka sometimes I think they will use right-wing people as a martyr in order to uplift them, so that it makes them more popular, so that they can have an excuse to put somebody deeply socially unpopular in. But yeah. Queer Back Socialista says, sometime good talk conveys the message best. Yep. Cat Terrell says, that's my lifelong observation. The South Pacific since World War II has Western tested over 1,200 nukes at sea, totally devastating the ocean environment. Yeah. Like, what is that doing to our ocean life? They don't actually care about it. Tom's Oklahoma says U.S. is the biggest pro-lifer in nukes in the proliferation of nukes in the world. They arm countries with nukes and force countries to arm up with nukes to detour U.S. imperialism. Yeah, that's the sad part. Paul Smith says the resistance needs to stop trying to appeal to U.S. better nature, as it doesn't exist. The gloves need to come off. See, that's the problem. If the gloves come off, civilization may cease to exist. I don't know. I honestly do not know. It's going to have to come from the inside. That's the only thing I can think of. It's going to have to come from the inside. Because you can do, like, Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, they can try all they want, but it will never actually, the US will never change its ways, because corporations are the ones that are puppeteering the United States. They're puppeteering the United States government, because profit, incentives, and greed are what drives them. The only way that you can really change this country and take the reins of government out of the hands of corporations is if the people on the inside rip it away from them. It's like being enslaved in a house, and the slave master is doing horrible things to the neighbors. The neighbors can try to do things from the outside, but it's not really going to work. But the slaves on the inside, how can I put this without getting myself in trouble? The slaves need a bigger pie. Or the slave master needs to shave. The thing is like, it has to be done from the inside. And it has to be done by somebody who essentially the ruling class kind of trusts, or they trust in their mind that they would never, right? Look what happened to the United Healthcare CEO. The citizens would never. Citizens are tired. The thing is are we ready to go after systems instead of just individuals? Are we ready to actually have a system where it encourages people to live and thrive instead of the wholesale murder of thousands just so that a small group of people can have power at the top? Yeah, has to be from the inside. Joe Anthony says, oh, yeah. I sent you guys the link to that tweet. I think it's on Danny Haifong's channel, so if you guys want to watch it. Jessica says, I love that he just said Uno reverse. Look, that's just the way my brain works. Oh, Lord. Whatever man says, close all the U.S. bases in Korea. I fully agree with that. DJ Leader says, anyone else in the RBM fam feel like they're going insane? We are seeking the truth while feeling like everyone else is either sleeping, ignorant, or disengaged, misinformed. Look, here's the thing. If you feel like you're one of the only ones that's awake, it's because you are. Revolution starts with education. And when it comes to education, some people are just not there yet. And that's, I'm not going to say that's okay, but you have to give them grace and you have to give them patience. Because propaganda manipulation really is a hell of a drug. And we're constantly being manipulated, gaslit, propagandized in order to think that this system is all we can have or this is the best we can do, when in reality, it isn't. And we have to encourage our fellow citizens, workers, proletariat, whatever you want to call them, that we can do better. We can dream bigger. That takes time. That takes effort. That takes work. And it can be arduous to do. And the only thing we can do is for me to do weekly and daily streams like this, doing mutual aid on the ground. Are you doing mutual aid on the ground? Are you having these conversations and just have them just layman's conversations, nothing using these, big words and complex terms. Just, talk about what people deserve better and then meet people where they are when it comes to their needs. If people are talking about security, if people are talking about safety, people are talking about having, food on the table, their light bills on, making sure that, they have healthcare, things like this. You all can link it together. That's what we have to keep doing. And it's growing. This is why they want to get rid of TikTok, right? That's why. And because the truth is circulating. All right, so Creative Experiments says Boeing Stryker could have stopped weapon shipments, but they gave up. Yeah. And absolutely, Dave Whitley says follow the money. Roger Meadow says you replace shareholder-owned corporations with stakeholder-owned cooperatives. I want to help Madeline. Please put her in contact with me. Yeah, I sent I let her know in the DMs about you, so hopefully she'll follow and DM you. So I already got that done. But yeah. Dave Whitley says, don't fall for the algorithm feeding you city blues. Wall Street wants control of the farmers, and then quality and nutrition goes down. Yeah. So With that being said, let me check the rock pin just one more time. Yeah, let me go in there. Then we can head on out. All righty. New York Post reported on universities and hospitals participating in MK Ultra. Naomi Klein mentioned that in her book, The Shock Doctrine. I saw the documentary, but I never read the book. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for the tip on Rockman as well. Hemcar says the government, armed with all the awesome powers at its command, destroy the lives and livelihoods of thousands, nay, tens of thousands of people who simply oppose the status quo and wished to change the way things were in this country. We have only the haziest insight into the scope of this program. For, as has been suggested, Senate hearings into the problem did not meaningfully resolve the problems. Mumia Abu Jamal says we want freedom, a life in the Black Panther Party chapter on COINTEL. Howard Zinn said to read before his death on Democracy Now. Says we don't ever get a piece of pie, work 50 years, retired and die, stay poor. Rich folks is the criminal, but you don't want to hear me though. So, Dead Press W4. Thank you very much for that, Hemcar, as well. Okay, so I'm gonna head on out. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. I will be live on RBN for the JB show. Yeah, the JB show. Be doing news stories as well. So if you guys want to, you guys can tune in there. And also, I will be having on a North Korea expert next Tuesday. So if you guys would like to tune in, if you guys want to know more facts about North Korea, you guys can always tune in next Tuesday. And thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate any of you who are new members, new subscribers, new viewers. Welcome. It's so nice to have you. And I hope to see you again in the next one. All right. So, like I always say, what do I always say, guys? Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. Smoke if you got smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary, or read because reading is fundamental. I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Of course, I'll be doing the readings of all the books that I've been doing. And yeah, have a good one. And free all the people. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.